Hello everybody, this is Havoc and welcome to my review of the Steel and Statecraft update coming to Thrones of Britannia. Total War content creators were given early access to the update, no doubt in the hopes that we could shine some light on an otherwise rather gloomy release for Thrones. To give you the context of my review, I played a little over 100 turns as Wessex on very hard. I chose Wessex as it's the largest of the starting factions, meaning I'd have the most characters or nobles to deal with in terms of estates, traits, and politics. I'd also like to quickly point out that I have very briefly touched the previous update in Thrones of Britannia right before I started my new Steel and Statecraft campaign. So while I am slightly aware of some certain features implemented before the Steel and Statecraft update, I'm going to treat this review for those who played it since the last update, as well as those who may have not touched it since release or who haven't played it at all. In my original review, located in the upper right corner and in the video description, I said the game was unique in its own ways, yet extremely shallow with a lot of features just not being fleshed out to their potential. I enjoyed several aspects of it, but it was simply lacking and incomplete. Thrones on release was a buy if you're just that excited about the time period, or if you're wanting some fresh historical content while you wait for Three Kingdoms. That's changed quite a bit with the Steel and Statecraft update, and it's very much changed my view on Thrones of Britannia overall. As always, let's dive into it. Anyone who's watched a review or breakdown video of mine knows that I love to focus on the user interface of a game, as it's crucial to how well a player can access information and be able to play the game. The old system of notifications appearing at the top is gone, with the Steel and Statecraft update bringing them down above the intern button on the right hand side. This frees up the top of your faction button, which makes it much easier to access your faction information. These two changes alone have helped straighten the game up. I never enjoyed that big list of notifications at the top, and to be quite honest, I always stumble through the buttons at the top right to try and find my Factions tab. The design is clean and effective as it should be. Buildings in Thrones of Britannia have received some love as well. All buildings in the minor settlements now split their building trees at level 2, giving you more options to choose from the beginning and ultimately boosting your economy more effectively than before this update. In some cases, this means gaining estates earlier in the game than previously as well. Lastly, and very quickly, there is now a politics difficulty slider to go with your campaign and battle sliders when choosing a faction on the main menu. I played on very hard as Wessex, and while I did suffer a lot from loyalty issues, there really wasn't anything so challenging that it broke me. Most of my problems were solved through estates, gaining loyalty through bribes, or the successful assassination. It's possible that playing as an easy faction, my decisions were therefore easy to resolve, or that the very hard difficulty simply wasn't that difficult. Estates in Thrones of Britannia was one of the biggest features I was excited about, but was one of the biggest disappointments on release. The idea of appeasing characters by giving them estates was a fantastic one, but outside of giving it to them, there were no benefits or modifiers or anything to give it more depth. Steel and Statecraft overhauls the estate system to give it a lot more weight in the game. Estates are very conveniently laid out in the Government and Estates tab. In this tab, you'll be able to get a very comprehensive view of all of your estates and who owns them. Granting an estate to a character increases the noble's loyalty and increases their political power, but that's something you'll have to keep in check. Estates no longer cost upkeep, as they did in the last update, and now provide their own range of campaign benefits, easily displayed and is heavily influenced by their owner's own traits. Not every character is suitable to hold every type of estate, and that can change throughout your campaign. For instance, several of my nobles increase the amount of food produced when they own an agricultural estate, but a few of them actually hurt production. Paying attention to the traits and modifiers of each character will allow you to place certain estates under certain characters. Keep in mind that should you decide to switch an estate type or strip an estate from a noble, they will not take kindly to that and will likely result in certain new traits for that character and or a loyalty drop. One very cool feature about estates is that nobles will occasionally seek out a specific type of estate in the form of a mission. These missions can be ignored, of course, but the benefits of complying tend to outweigh losing an estate to a noble. I received one such mission in my playthrough where a newly made noble wanted 3 agricultural estates, but the reward was 10,000 gold. As king, I had 4 agricultural estates of my own and was currently in a major war, so I could use the money. Giving away 3 estates at once to one single noble is no small ordeal, but to me, the reward made it worthwhile. It is also possible to get missions from a noble requesting that you not strip them of their estates for a certain amount of turns, which will usually result in an allegiance buff for that character. In my 100 turns with my new campaign, I never once felt the need to strip an estate from a character, so these missions were always accomplished right off the bat and I had no issues. There are 3 types of estates: agricultural, religious, and noble. Agricultural estates are generated through almost every form of food production, from the Lord's Fields building chain and orchards to pastures and hunting grounds. Agricultural estates will be by far your most easy to produce and dole out to your nobles. The benefits of owning these types of estates usually come in the form of an increased production of food. Religious estates are harder to come by in the fact that the Abbey building chain is the only one that generates these estates. By far the greatest benefit of owning religious estates is an increase in the character's allegiance to your faction, which affects the overall happiness in both your character and the province in which he may reside in. Religious estates are very beneficial for governors to hold for that very reason. The last set are noble estates. Noble estates are the hardest to generate due to the fact they're locked behind the 4th tier of the agricultural tech tree. As such, it was very late into my campaign before I even had the option to develop them. You can only build estates in the main settlement building chain, which makes them potentially even more scarce than the religious estates. The main benefit I've seen to them is an increase in tax revenue, so it's definitely something you could work into your building schemes. It just might be a while before you get to them. Traits got an overhaul as well. The trait system on release was not too impressive to me. I didn't really follow what traits my characters had, as it just wasn't that important. This changed for me with the update, as my character's traits seemed to have more impact, especially in regards to something like estates. I started paying attention to who had what trait, was it affecting their loyalty, were they worth keeping as governors on low public order areas, etc, etc. What I do not recall is if specific and constant types of events modified these traits, or if there was a level system to those traits. For instance, in a surprise war against me during my campaign, I immediately lost 2 of my biggest breadbasket regions, which caused a massive food deficit. It was several turns before I was able to recover those regions, and in those several turns, my governors developed the greed trait due to the lack of food, and a few of them to that 3rd level, which caused a huge public order problem. Once my food situation resolved over the course of the next several turns, those governors eventually lost those traits and public order was restored. This is one of the best features about the trait system in Thrones, is the ability to lose as well as gain traits. If those governors couldn't lose that 3rd level greed trait, I would have had to kill them off to get that multiplier off of the province. Instead, once the factor that caused the trait was gone, the trait itself leaves. And it's a two-way street. Having a general that gains positive traits buffing your troops in battle is great, but sit him in a city for too long without getting in battles, and he'll not only lose it, but he might gain a negative trait to replace it. With all of these traits coming and going constantly, it might seem overwhelming to keep track of them. That's where 2 newly implemented features come in: trait groups and the book of traits. Clicking on a character's details, you used to get a big, long list of traits in the middle column, but now the middle column is broken up into groups of traits, giving you super easy access to every trait and their modifiers. This breakdown is quick, it's simple, and it gives you an idea on what's going on in this character's life and his qualities. For those of you who are wondering exactly what events trigger certain traits, that's where the Book of Traits comes in. Located in the top left menu, the Book of Traits is broken down into the same trait groups found in the character trait detail, going through every single trait, the effects of every level of said trait, and what causes that trait to appear. Any trait not found is hidden with the exception of what triggers it to appear. Now, the Book of Traits is persistent across all of your campaigns, which allows for a bit of replayability or even roleplay to discover new traits to complete the book in other playthroughs. The last big improvement that Steel and Statecraft presents is in recruitment. On release, recruitment was chance-based, where you had to research or build certain buildings to increase the likelihood, not the guaranteed, of a certain type to appear. That system, though challenging to a degree, ultimately ended in frustration for me when elite units rarely appeared, especially those types that were lost in a battle. Chance-based recruitment has now been replaced with the cooldown system. Once a unit is recruited, there is a set number of turns before they become available again. Of course, the higher tier the unit, the higher the cooldown timer, but by removing that chance factor, you can at least plan ahead a bit or simply know when a unit will become recruitable again. As on release, building certain buildings and researching certain techs gives you bonuses that reduce the cooldown timers, but there's now also faction mechanics and recruitment events that will help even further. This new system works very well, and it was much less frustrating for me to develop the army setups I wanted. Building into the chains consistently saw the biggest gains in the total number of units I could have in my recruitment pool, and by the mid to late game, I had no issues creating the exact armies I desired for future wars against my neighbors. The units seem much more balanced as well, though the exact details of said balancing will be shown in a future patch note blog by Creative Assembly. There are always areas of improvement. The AI did seem to take advantage of certain situations on the campaign map, as the surprise war I mentioned was nearly detrimental because all of my armies were off fighting another war up north. However, I did get declared on by quite a few factions that never stepped foot onto my land. A few of them were client states, so I understand they just wanted to break off, not actually conquer me. The other factions? I guess they simply hated me, and I suppose declaring war was their only way of letting me know that. Outside of that declaration, I never saw an enemy army until I brought my armies onto their land, as that's how I feel I should deal with my enemies. Random AI war declaration and aggressiveness is something Creative Assembly has always seemed to struggle balancing with in their last generation of games. Politically, there are a couple of things to mention. Around 75% of my nobles that I raised up to any positions immediately had loyalty issues. There was no loyalty increase when I appointed them, and that just doesn't seem right. If I appoint a noble to be governor, he should, at a minimum, gain at least one loyalty simply because I chose him over the others. More often than not, I just wanted to kill the guy off immediately, instead of spending money just to appease him to gain loyalty. I also did not have that much difficulty managing the political side, though I did still enjoy it. I mentioned earlier about the political slider, and I wish I had tried it on legendary difficulty. My only concern with that is I think all it would do is modify the loyalty, that's it. Managing loyalty alone doesn't give us the depth we need, and only having the options of granting estates or that 3-box decision model that Total War is used, it just doesn't feel complete. Now it's down to the last part of the video. Is the Steel and Statecraft update enough to redeem Thrones of Britannia? Can a single update revive the player base to re-explore a botched game on release? This update does not fix everything that is wrong with the game. I don't want to paint this glorious picture of amazingness because it is not. There are definitely areas that could still be worked on, but for me, this update really did change my opinion of the game for the better. The 3 areas of estates, traits, and recruitment were the 3 biggest areas that failed to impress me in my initial release playthrough. The new estate system is useful now, it actually comes with benefits, and it has multiple aspects affecting its effectiveness. The trait system is the best I have seen in a Total War game to date, though I only say that because we haven't been able to play 3 Kingdoms yet. It brought a depth to the political side that wasn't there on release, and I really started to care about certain governors and generals due to the traits that they had developed. The ebb and flow of gaining and losing traits keeps you on your toes, and the Book of Traits is an excellent reference guide on how to guide your characters. The recruitment system revamp just makes for less frustrating campaign gameplay in general, as you have more control over your own army's development. For those skeptical viewers, I know I usually try my best to put a positive spin on games in general, and I even have a tendency to keep things positive when there's no area for it. But I truly believe that this update will change the opinion of a lot of Total War players. I thoroughly enjoyed my campaign and the preparation for this review. The system revamps fit into the equation and added a degree of depth that I think everyone was looking for, even if not the depth that we want, but a depth that still should have been there on release. So here's what I want to end with. I want you to at least give Thrones of Britannia another chance. If you own it, once it's open to the public, go play another campaign. I think you'll actually enjoy it. It might not blow you away or make you want to play every single faction or go achievement hunting, but this update deserves at its base a second chance of redemption, so I say you should try it. I gave it a second chance and has left me with wanting to do more inside of the game beyond this initial review. As always, ladies and gents, if you enjoyed this video and the review, be sure to give it that thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. When the Steel and Statecraft update comes out for the public, come back to this video and let me know how your campaign went and what you thought. Maybe try playing on legendary political difficulty to see how that goes. Other than that, thank you for taking the time to watch this video. This is Havoc, and I'll see you in the next one.